This video will show you how to change how your work looks. In other words, how to format it. To select all cells on your worksheet, click on this cell on the top left hand corner. Now if you wanted to change your font, you can use this drop down box here and choose a different font. My recommendation with fonts is not to make it too fancy. If it's fancy writing, it makes it more difficult to read. So use a simple font. You may also want to change the size of your writing depending on your audience to make it larger. Another option is to just change the zoom factor on the bottom right hand corner here. It's another way of making it larger for your audience, or they may choose to do that totally irrespective of what you're doing. But for now I'm just going to reduce the size of the font back down to 10. Now if you want to select a row, then click on the row number and it selects the whole row. Now this is a heading, we may want to make it bigger. One way is to use this increase font size. If that's too big, you can reduce it down again. I'm going to go for a 14. You can also use these buttons along here to make the writing bold, or italics, or underline, or all three. But my recommendation is just to keep things simple. Use extra special formatting sparingly. Now I've got some other headings. I'm just going to select the first two and make them bold. If I wanted to make all the headings in the first column bold, I would click on this letter A, which selects the whole column. Then I can just turn on the bold formatting. Now you'll notice that some of my text is not visible. That's because my column width is not wide enough for that text. To widen it, I've got two options. I can widen it manually. Alternatively, I can double click the space between the two columns. Now you'll notice that when I do it, my heading is actually the widest part, and I may not want that width. So I'm going to manually change it to there. Now you'll notice that some of my headings are not visible. One option to make them wider, one option to make them visible is to select the cells concerned. I'm just going to click and drag. Then I'm going to come up here and click Wrap Text. Let's have a look at what it does. Now you'll see that the row height for row 7 and row 8 has increased. And now I can see the whole text: electricity authority levy and prompt payment discount. So wrap text is a very useful way for making the text in your cells readable and not covered up. I'm going to do the same with the company and the plan. Wrap text. Now I'm noticing that the company names are still a wee bit too long for my liking. So I'm going to click and drag B to E to select the 4 columns, and then I'm going to manually widen the column. Now with rows 3 and 4, I notice that the text is actually sitting along the bottom line. I would actually like it in the center, so I'm going to click the center one. This is for the what they call the vertical alignment. You may also want your headings to be aligned center horizontally, so click on that center button here. So these 3 buttons affect your horizontal alignment. These 3 buttons up here affect your vertical alignment. Now you may want to put a border around some of your cells. So I'm going to select the first group of cells, and I'm going to click on the border button and see what selections are available. I'm going to use this all borders option. That puts a border around all the selected cells. Another option that I sometimes do afterwards is to put a thicker border around the outside, like that. So if we select another cell, we can see what's happened. You'll notice that there's a thicker line on the outside than the lines that are on the inside. We can do a similar thing with the number of days electricity used. All borders, followed by a thick border. Similarly for the GST rate. With the heading for the fixed charges, you may want to change what they call the fill color. That's the background color to the cell. So if we just click on that button, we will get the default selected color. If we click on this drop down box, we can change the color. Now I'm actually going to do something a little bit tricky and make the background color black. Now I can't see my writing, so I'm going to change my writing to white. So now I've got a heading that instead of being black writing with a white background, I've got a white writing with a black background. Now you may not want that option, particularly if you're using a black and white printer and you want to conserve toner, but that's an option to consider. Now I actually want to copy this heading to some other cells. I've already done some formatting on it. The easiest way to copy it is to select the cell, click on this Format Painter. If I click on it once, then I can paint another cell with the same formatting. If I go back and double click the Format Painter, then I can format cells many times with that same formatting until I turn that Format Painter off. We can do a similar thing with these daily charges and fixed charges. We can put some formatting around it. I'm just going to do all borders without a thick border. I can select a row, I can double click the Format Painter, and then I can copy the format over to this row and over to these rows. And then I can turn it off again. Now I would like to actually do something about the number formatting. The daily rate, variable rate and electricity authority levy, they are all dollar amounts, whereas the prompt payment discount and the GST rate, they are percentages. So let's have a look at number formatting and have a look at how we can put them into some sort of currency format. One option is just to simply click on this dollar sign and it will automatically convert them into dollars. Now the figures that I'm using actually have 5 figures after the decimal point. So what I'm going to do is expand the number of decimal points showing. To do this, I click on this increase decimal button. Clicking on it 3 times to move it from 2 to 5 decimal places. If I go too far and I put an extra one I don't need, I can always click on the decrease decimal button. Now for percentages, the easiest option is just to click on this percent sign. And if I wanted an extra decimal point, click on the increase decimal button. In this case I don't actually require it, so I'm going to leave it out. Similarly with the GST rate, click on the percentage button. Now the amounts in the daily charges, fixed charges, etc., these are all dollar amounts. So I'm going to select the cell range that I'm after. I'm actually going to hold down my control key and select a different range. Still with my control key held down, I'm going to select a different range again. Let go of the control key and I press the dollar sign, and all my selected cells are formatted with the currency format. If you wanted to format your cell with a different number formatting, then you can click down this drop down box and choose a different one. For instance, if you wanted to currency. But in this case, electricity used is not measured in dollars. We could come back to this comma style that will remove that formatting and put a comma in for the thousands and millions if required. Now that's got 2 decimal places, so I'm going to decrease the number of decimal places. So that is an introduction on how to change how your work looks.